Hi there, this is Power Phil, and I'm going through a video today showing how to make these nice timelines up here using components. So I made an app recently which was went down well with the people it was made for, and one of the things they liked most about was this timeline up here that runs across the top of the app, allowing you to flick between pages and showing you where it is. So this app was designed for phone and has multiple pages where the user could fill out different information and move from page to page. Moving between pages meant that you need to have something that helps you keep track of where you are. And a timeline like this makes that very easy to do. So I'm going to show you how to make this using components. So you only make one of these and then implement it across each page in the app. Really useful tool, and it can be customized to also maybe so that it only fills in when everything is completed on a certain page as well. So you can use this in a variety of different ways. We're going to look how to use it to keep track of where you are in the app, just like it is right now. So first things first, I've started up a new project. I just put together a few screens here. Nothing is really hooked up to anything. I just put in 5 new screens, and I just put on random inputs, checkboxes, drop downs. As I said, nothing actually is connected to anything, it's just sample data in there. Just to get it looking and make each page a little bit different, so that while we're moving through pages, we'll be able to see some change in what we're looking at. So next thing, what we're going to do is we're going to start building the component which is going to run our timeline over here. So as you can see, components are already live over here. For me, I've got that option, and what you need to do to actually get that option is in under settings, in under advanced settings here, and there is somewhere along here. And right here, just low down on that preview features list, is this components, which you think components as app building blocks. So there's stuff you can use throughout all aspects of the app. So you need to make sure that is set to on, and if it is, then you're good to try out some components. So I've got this section here, and I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to build a new component. And this opens up a whole new page where you're going to actually build it. So the next thing I'm going to do now is I'm going to actually make my component the shape I want it to be. So what I'm going to do here is, you can see if I've got my component highlighted over here, I can select some of its features here. So the height of it, I only want it to be a height of around 80. Somewhere between 80 and 100 gives that good. It's only supposed to be a little slip across the top, so it's not supposed to be huge. And one other thing I like to do is set my width to app.width. That will just make sure that it's always the same width as whatever app I'm using, especially if I decide to make this app responsive so that it can work on a variety of different devices and scale in the future. And the next thing I'm going to do is add that line that shoots across my app. It's just a straight line. So if I look through here, I probably have some options for something. I'm just going to use a rectangle, and I'm actually just going to flatten it out. So I'm going to use this rectangle, and I'm going to make it really quite thin, and let's make this white, let's say. So I'm going to make it a color of white, and actually that poses a difficulty when you do that. It can disappear the way it's disappeared on me there now, because it's a white line on a white background. So what I tend to do is click my component feature and make the background some bizarre color like green. So here we have this line here. I'll always want that to be in the center of my app. So what I'm going to do just to start with is I'm going to put it, let's say it starts on the X at, let's say, around 80, and then I'll always want it to actually be like 80 from the right as well. So what I want it to be is a width of of the app. I want this line to be the same width as the app, minus 80 down here and minus 80 up here. So this line, what I'm going to do is I'm going to edit its width feature, and I'm going to say it's app.width, and as you can see, that's pushed it off the line 80 because it's app.width and it's starting 80 in. What I'm going to do is subtract 160 from it. That way we'll have 80 on either side of that line, no matter what size the app is or what size our phone is that we're looking at it. And we've got that nice little line there. Now, next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add in little circles for each of my pages, so that represent each page that I'm on. So let's see if we can find a circle here, and there's one. And we're going to need to make them much smaller. So right now I'm just going to kind of vaguely edit that, and then I'm going to tidy it up over here, making its height and width the same so that it looks keeps the proportions of a circle. So I'm going to make that 30 and 30 over here, my height and my width. And that should give us, yeah, a nice little kind of style of a circle. And I'm also going to copy that and put it in 4 more times, because we've got actually 5 of these pages. So I'm going to paste this in, paste this in, and paste this in. So somewhere around this would be our 5 dots for 5 pages. If you wanted to be particular about this, so I've got this one, and the start and the finish is easy. These dots in the middle can be quite tricky. What we're really doing here is we're splitting that line up into 4 parts. And if I want this to be exactly between these 4 parts, that actually doesn't do too bad a job. I'm going to position my one right in the middle first, and then get that to a certain point where it kind of can tell me, yeah, I'm right in the middle there. What I was going to say was one way of doing this as well would be to take that length of that line, split it into 4 parts, and then kind of use that information to place each of these dots. But for now, this looks good. One thing I probably should have done as well is maybe colored these in the color I want them. So let's start by making them purple, because the background of our app is going to be purple. So I'm going to make each of these purple for now at least. Purple. And had I done this on the first one before copying them, it would have saved me this bit of work. I'm also going to make the border on each of them white to match the line, to kind of give it a sense of it's part of that line going around. And let's make it 2. See how that looks. And that looks good. So just getting everything looking the way I want it before we move any further here. And it can be tricky to navigate this right hand panel sometimes. So, and this is going to be our timeline that runs across the top of each page. And it looks quite good. So I'm going to just name this component so it's easy to find inside our app. So I'm going to rename this, and I'm just going to call it timeline. Now we still have to apply some logic here, but let's hop back to our app and see if we can actually insert this in. So let's look at screen 1. And if I go up here to custom, up in my top bar, I can actually see my component up here, timeline. And I can pop that in there. As you can see, it's coming in with that really ugly green background that we had. That is something we can change now in a second. I'm going to put this into each of these screens. And that's the nice thing about using a component, is I only have to build it once, and I can paste it in, and I can use it across a variety of screens. So here we're using it for this timeline feature, but you could also use it, let's say, for the heading of a screen to run across the top. So to tell you, like this screen 4, I've it put in separately on each page, but you could use a component to do that. So here we go. So we have it across each page with that ugly green background. So let's change that for now. So let's go back to our timeline here, and instead of fill, sometimes I like to give it that translucent background. So it's going to pick up the background color of the page it's on. So now if we hop back to our screen, you can see now we've got that timeline across the top of each of those screens, and it looks quite well. So our next step is going to be adding the logic in here so that it knows what screen you're actually talking about, what screen you're on. So if we go back to our component, which I can navigate to over here, I'm going to actually give it that green background again just so I can see what's going on. And that's something I find I flip between when I'm working on my component. I give it that background so I can actually see what's going on. So if I highlight my timeline feature here, my timeline component, you can see over here there's this new custom property. This is where you can kind of set variables that are accessible through the app. And this is where you can send information between the app and the component, because it can be difficult at times to communicate between the two. So I'm going to add a new custom property, and I'm going to say page 1, or screen, I think is the term we're using here. And this will be to tell me, are we on screen 1, let's say. Custom property, and property type, it's going to be an input is this is type of property that can receive values from the app, which the component can then use internally, or an output. This is the type property which can emit data or state from the component which the app can use. So this is going to be an input because we're going to take in information from the app saying what page we're on, and then we're going to highlight or color in one of these circles depending on that. So this is going to be Boolean because it's going to be true or false. Are we on this page? Yes. If yes, make it, let's say, white. If no, make it purple. So we can keep it as Boolean. And let's say create. So that's a screen 1. And let's keep this going. So let's add in one for screen 2 as well. And perhaps we have a way of, let's say, copying this. And perhaps not. So let's put in 5 of these for each of the pages really quickly. Screen 3 and Boolean, and screen 4, and let's make it Boolean, and the last one is screen 5. Let's make that Boolean. So screen 5, and let's make this Boolean. And this is information we'll be able to change in the app, and therefore be able to change our timeline depending on that. So now we've made these 5 screens as custom properties over here. We're going to be able to use that in our component, and let's just have a look over at the app and see if we can see that property in here. So let's say if I click on screen 1, let's just look at this component. If I click on my timeline component here, and let's look at the properties it has up here, you can see those 5 screens, which are the variables we entered in there, are each available up here. So let's say when I'm on screen 1, I can see each of these properties here, and I can set them to true or false because we set it to Boolean. So that's why it's giving me that true, and everything's set to true at the minute, which is fine for now. And we'll come back and deal with that, but just know on each screen that component has each of these properties here. So let's go back and let's now start adding some logic here. So if I look at each of these circles, so this is the circle that represents screen 1, screen 2, screen 3, screen 4, and screen 5. So let's start with screen 1. So right now it's this color here, which is that purple it's shaded in it. And I want this to be an if statement. So I'm going to say if. And I'm going to select my timeline here. Timeline. It should come up as a usable feature here. So timeline dot, and I'll be able to pick one of my variables. So let's say if screen 1 is true. Timeline dot screen 1 is true. Well then, I won't want it to be purple. I want it to be white at that point. So I'm going to just type in the word white. It should pick up that as a color. And I'm going to put in an extra bracket here. So that says if my variable screen 1 is true, then this is going to be white. So I'm going to actually just, and otherwise it's going to be that purple. So it's saying if the variable timeline screen 1, I don't actually have to put in an equals to true here. It knows what I mean. I could do equals true. Then it's going to color itself in white as it is here, or otherwise it's going to be a purpley color. I'm going to steal this bit of code here and I'm going to put it in on the other circle. So let's go here to the fill color of the second one. I'm going to paste this in here. And in this case, I'll want it so that if we're on screen 2, then I'll want it to be white. And otherwise, I'll want it to be purple. And I'm going to go to the third circle and I'm going to do the same. And all the time I'm changing that fill property. The property it colors in with. I'm going to paste over this. And I want this one to be white when we're on screen 3. Same with the fourth one. So I want this one to be white when we're on screen 4. And the very last one, I want this one to be white when we're on screen 5. Now you might notice that they're all white here, and if we hop back to our app, they're all going to be white across the top here in our app. And the reason for that is right now we haven't done anything with those variables that we set. So if I look at my screen 1, each of these variables are all set to true. The screen 3 variable, screen 5. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to leave my screen 1 variable on this page to true. And this is going to take a little bit of time, but I'm going to put in false for screen 2, so that to keep this one as purple on this page. And same with screen 3. And same with screen 4. Same with screen 5. And this is a little bit tedious, but you're going to see the way this has worked. So that's perfect there. I'm going to go to my screen 2. And on screen 2, in that component, I want my screen 1 to be false. I want to keep my screen 2 as 3. My screen 3 as false. My screen 4, I'm going to change to false. And my screen 5, I'm going to change to false as well. And now already, hopefully you'll see that when I go to screen 1 and screen 2, it looks like it's jumping between the two, and it looks like that is following. And that's what we're going for here. So let's keep this going here. Screen 3, I'll want to set my screen 1 to false. I want to set my screen 2 to false. I'll want to keep it filled in on screen 3, but I'll want to change my screen 4 to false. And I want to change my screen 5 to false. And let's do the same on screen 4. And as I say, this part is a little bit tedious, but it pays off in the end. So screen 1, I'm set to false. Screen 2, false. Screen 3. And as I said, this is just one application of this. You could use this in a variety of other different ways, probably more creative than the way I'm using it right now. One way I've used it before is, as I said at the start, was that these would only fill in. I put in a bit of code here to say it would only fill in and color in white if the person had completed all the items on that page. So a little more tricky than what we're doing here. But now I've got all of them in. I'm also going to go back to my component. I'm going to get rid of that green background just for now, to see this working nicely. You can see the way it becomes invisible there on our component screen because now it's the same color as the background. Now when I hop back to my app, we've got this lovely way of cycling through the screens where it seems to be following each item, and that is great. So that works out lovely for us. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do now is we're going to make it so that we can actually click between these screens in the app, and we can actually use this to navigate between our screens. So what we're going to do is put in some invisible buttons. So on screen 1, I'm going to put in a button here. I'm going to put it over that button there. And I'm going to cover each of these with one of these buttons. So this is useful because on these buttons we can actually put some information on them, so when selected we can get it to navigate to a certain page. So let's say our first one here, I'm not going to put anything on the first dot because we're on screen 1. So I'm just going to put unselect, and luckily we're on our unselect event already, so when this button is selected, what I wanted to do is navigate and to screen 2. So I want that one to navigate to screen 2. This one here, I want to navigate to screen 3. And this one I want to navigate to screen 4. And the very last one I'll want to navigate to screen 5. So once again, a little bit tedious, but it all pays off in the end. Doing this makes it such a nice way of using this app. So let's also get rid of all the text off each of these. So we kind of finally make these, then make them kind of translucent so that you can't see them, but they're there and you can interact with them. So now what I'm going to do with each of these is I am going to make them colorless. So where is our color property? And you might have to do a little bit of work with this to make sure when you hover over it they stay translucent. But there, I'm making that translucent, and each of these I am making translucent. Now I imagine I need to change their hover color and potentially their pressed color, because when I hover over each of them you can see that button still appears. So let's look at that, and down here you can see there's a hover color function and a pressed color function as well. So let's try and get rid of each of them. So our button here, our hover fill, I'm going to try and keep it to be blank, and same with our pressed color, so that when I hit that button there, very nice, it takes us to screen 2 and it didn't highlight at all. So let's go back to screen 1 and let's complete that on each of these other ones as well. So it's mainly just this hover color, we need to get rid of that, and let's just make it translucent always. And same over here, hover color, get rid of that code that's up there that gives it that color, and make sure that each of these are translucent. And now if I take my app for a test run, I should be able to use this timeline to jump to another screen. So why don't I jump to 4, and you can see it actually held on to some pressed color there, so it lit up when I pressed 4. So let's go back to my screen 1, let's see why that happened. So the pressed color we'll have to just change out, because I think it's set to white. So back to that translucent color again for each of these. So the pressed color once again, let's get rid of that. And set each of them to translucent. And same for the very last one. So you have to get rid of that code that's in the top bar and then go back down and set it to translucent. So now once again, let's see how it does when we select one of these screens. So from screen 1, if I select screen 3, and it jumps nicely. Now we need to go back and do that for each of these screens. You've seen how it's done on screen 1, so you've seen it already here. I'm going to continue on. But yeah, feel free to finish it off yourself if you want. So I'm going to grab some of this information here. I'm going to grab some of these buttons and copy them over into my other screens. So for screen 2, I'll still want each of these buttons here. So I'm going to paste them in here. They can keep the exact same logic. I'm going to take that, undo what I just did there now, but I'm going to take one of these buttons and make it so that it navigates back to screen 1. So I don't have to do everything again from scratch, but I'm going to take, let's say, these two, and I'm going to use them two buttons on my screen 3 because I'll still want them two buttons there on screen 3. And I'm going to copy this one and move it over here, and all I have to change in each of these buttons is so that it navigates to the correct page. Screen 2, and let's put in, I'm going to copy paste that same one that I had again, these invisible buttons running around the place, and I'm going to get this one to navigate to screen 1. And now let's hop to page 4, and I can put in, actually let's hop all the way to page 1 and let's steal some of this information here again. I'll want this one, and this one for page 4. So on page 4, I'm going to paste these in here, move them down. Some of my stuff isn't quite in line with the pages. You'll want to maybe take some time to make sure everything's in line and tidy it up. This is more just for functionality's sake, to have this looking quite nice. And let's take these 3 here, and we're going to use these again for screen 5. So let's hop over to our screen 5, paste them in there, and one last move then is to just put something over that navigate to page 4 page. So all the while I'm using these invisible buttons, and hopefully now when I actually use my app, it should be quite nice to move between screens. I'm currently on screen 5, screen 3, screen 4, screen 2, screen 1, screen 3, screen 2, and this is a lovely way of keeping track where you are in an app, especially like an app like this where you've got multiple pages, which I think is more common, let's say, on a phone app than, let's say, a tablet app or a computer app, and helps the user know where they are in the app at all times. So that's how to use components in Power Apps to create a timeline to keep you moving through pages. Hopefully that helped, and I'll see you again on the next time.